Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm a Vedic astrologer with nearly 35 years experience, operating out of New Bedford, Massachusetts. And um, I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology over the coming year, just to give you a global overview of what's going to happen over the next 12 months, and also a quick overview of the next week. Um, the This will continue over the next couple of weeks because the Vedic New Year starts, or Makar Sankranti starts around January 15th, and that's an important date for astrology, for especially for economic predictions. So I'll be spending some more time on that over the next couple of weeks. But today I just want to give you a global overview and maybe a little briefer than my regular broadcasts. I've been promising that last week. I actually delivered it, but also just because of some medical procedures I've had done, I don't have quite the steam that I normally have. And so I don't want to overstress myself or you. These weren't serious medical procedures. I can attest to that, but they have taken a little bit of a toll on my energy level, and I expect to see that improving over the next few weeks. So, so I'm not seriously ill. Don't get the wrong idea. Um, but as you age, certain things start to become more noticeable. Okay, so we're going to go back to the New Year chart that we looked at a few weeks ago, and I'm going to set it for midnight at. By the way, if you want to get in touch with me for a reading or for lessons, I do lessons. I am particularly versed in Gemini and certain subsystems of astrology, which are pretty interesting and really unique to Indian astrology. And but also I can do regular Vedic charts. I can do a variety of areas. I also teach tarot, if you're interested in that. But um, but I also do readings. They range in price. There's a wide spectrum of prices. I can't provide them to you all uh, because of certain restrictions I'm under. But just contact me at 508-525-0001. There's no obligation if you talk with me. And even if you're interested in lessons and you don't like my vibe or something like that, I can refer you to other learning mechanisms to learn Vedic astrology. There are a lot now, much more so than when I first started about 1990. So yeah, yeah, there's a lot out there now. Some are like everything else. Some are easier to comprehend and deal with than others. Some are more expensive, some are less expensive. And it all depends on your style. But I do readings, and I do them in 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, and lifetime increments. We can also do 10-year readings if that appeals to you. But obviously the price will vary based upon the increments of time we cover. So that having been said, let me get away from the self-advertisement portion of this, and I'll hit you with one more self-advertisement. If you like what I'm doing, even if you don't, um, but if you think what I'm saying is worthwhile and you'd like to share Vedic astrology predictions with other people, please do so. If you've been watching me and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. It does help me out, and helps the channel out. And please comment. Please feel free to comment. I think this is one of the things. I have gotten some comments. Um, I do read all the comments. Sometimes I respond a little bit later than I like, but I do read all your comments, and I do take them seriously. By the way, you'll notice uh, in the background, you'll see my trained Triffids. Preparing for the next. For those of you familiar with the movie Day of the Triffids, that'll be kind of a sick joke, but they actually do look like Triffids, don't they? You know, like sort of scrawny Triffids. So let's see now, scrawny Triffids. God, I hate the way I hate the transcription process, but I'm never sure if it's my voice or the transcription process. Okay, so all right, so let's get on to the chart at hand. For this is the New Year's chart, and I'm taking New Year's as being midnight just for convenience sake because that's when the day changes. Normally, in Indian astrology, the day starts in the morning when the sun is rising in the eastern horizon. But for convenience sake, I'm taking the actual time. Numerologically, this is 2025 is a 9 year. It indicates the ending of a cycle. It's ruled by the number nine, at least in Vedic astrology, as I learned it, is ruled by Mars. And so it should be a rather, um, conclude some activities, and you'll see a start of some new activities in the next year, in 2026. But this is essentially the wrapping up of a cycle versus the starting of a cycle. There are going to be several significant events this year. Number one, transit-wise, we're going to be seeing some significant transits in terms of Mars moving into Gemini, then back into Cancer again over the next couple of months. And so that'll be the first one. So that Mars moving back into Gemini will make people a little more hostile, a little more violent. Actually, the Mars and Cancer is a violent combination as well, but it's more passive aggressive, less. Um, so what we're seeing in the media right now, so Mars in is is in its debilitation sign, is going right over the houses of the media and the United States chart. So we have a Rahu conjunction down here in the United States chart, and Mars is debilitated. So essentially, the media will not have as powerful a voice starting, at least currently. It'll resume some of its power, I would say, in January to February, but then lose it again in February for a variety of reasons. Also, I would expect to see militaristic activity start to climb a bit between January and February because of Mars in the seventh house, especially as it affects the USA chart, and especially as it affects the communications channels of the world. So that's Gemini. Also, at least from the chart, we now have Venus in the same sign with Saturn. That's going to make a lot of us a little bit depressed because Venus is typically a happy planet. That'll only last for about a month, but then Venus will go into conjunction with Rahu, and as a matter of fact, it'll last for this transit will last for a couple of months because Venus is going to flip a little backwards, go retrograde between now and March. And I think what you'll see in March is a Saturn Rahu Venus conjunction. Venus will be exalted, but this will give a lot of damage to the entertainment industry. Huge amount of scandals around entertainment and production and also religion. So again, we're going to be expecting to see this between March and June. Uh, the P. Diddy thing is really, I think, is just the tip of the iceberg. You'll see a lot of scandals come out with, especially connected with drugs and gosh, I'm trying to think of the words I want to say. Drugs and also communications companies and also film studios and the music industry, the entertainment industry overall. Pisces is interesting as a sign because a lot of people view this as a sign connected with religion, but it's also a sign connected with um, escapism, belief systems. And I think you'll see what I would call uh, kind of a purge. Uh, I would say before June. It's already starting, by the way, so that's not really a big shocker. But, but mainly between March and July, you'll see a lot of purge of the entertainment industry and also public relations firms. And definitely you're seeing it start already with some of the communications networks in the United States and around the world, but you'll see the purge of a lot of governmental institutions. Um, it may not be so. When I say purge, I don't mean people are going to be um, put up against the wall and shot. That's not what I'm implying, and that's not what I'm insinuating. And I actually wish I hadn't used the word that particular word. It does mean that there will be an effort to investigate or minimize spending, minimize secretive activity. And as I said a few years ago, and I can remember saying this a few years ago, we're seeing the right and the left come across as um, kind of a unified anti-establishment force. And that's going to get really intense over the next few months. Uh, it'll be at its most intense around April, but it'll continue for at least another year and a half. So I'm not expecting, um, especially after the next couple of years, the same media or spiritual influencers to have nearly as much pull as they have before. And that's something you can see happening right now. It's not even open to question. It's sort of inevitable, especially when the Saturn Rahu conjunction occurs. Now, again, interestingly, I have noticed large cultural shifts when Saturn and Rahu have formed together. So have come together. So they happened early in the 1990s, but this very short period, roughly between April and June, is very much like the late 60s in the United States. So does that mean we're going to have like a bunch of hippies or counterculture activists? Not really. I think what you'll see is more aggressive anti-war demonstrations, more aggressive civil rights demonstrations, and but also um, to a certain extent because what I remember happening in 1969, more clamping down on those kinds of activities. It's um, it's already something we're seeing, and this will affect the entire world because basically, um, the entire world economy is suffering because of things like the war in the Ukraine, the war in Israel, the um, the European economy is Germany's in a really rough shape because they can't get cheap gas from Germany anymore, and that'll sort of like hit a breaking point around March to May. And again, you're seeing a lot of anti-immigration uh, activity popping up in places like Ireland, England, France, Germany, uh, even even Eastern Europe. Um, and a lot of that has to do with even in places in the Far East. And a lot of that really has to do with it. It's not people being mean, it's people essentially saying they just can't support this kind of activity. Um, and they're also worried about the cultural identity of their particular nation and what it's going to look like in a few years. And that may sound like it's racist. It really isn't. I mean, I think if somebody were to come into your house and say, well, I'm going to change this. You're not going to have access to your refrigerator like you once had before because these other people are in line ahead of you and and they deserve it more, or you're not going to be able to sleep when you want to sleep. It's the way maybe to make it clearer, or you're not going to have as much resources to go around. The way to make it clearer is to personalize it. So many of these things aren't really, they're not really, they're based on self-preservation, not hatred. Okay, so there's a really big difference. And also, societies need time to adapt to large influxes of migration. They don't just adapt overnight, So I'm actually very, very, very pro-immigration, but it has to be controlled in some way. It has to be managed in some way. And it really hasn't been managed over the past few years. So, and again, it's not just a problem which is an issue in the United States. It's a problem pretty much all over the world. So, and again, the argument could be mainly Europe and the United States actually caused these particular patterns to evolve. And while that may be true, uh, there's also um, there there was also internal conflict in those societies that happened before the United States or Europe ever got involved. So did we make it worse? Oh yeah, definitely. Did Were there pre-existing conditions in those societies that made them unpleasant to stay in? I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we said there weren't. So, so again, there's this, you know, this is a political debate. I'm not trying to get into a political debate right now, but again, a lot of that, um, a lot of the adjustment is based on economic issues. A lot of it's based upon the strangeness of new cultures coming in. I can't think of any immigration wave in the United States that didn't cause some kind of a reaction. And it's also been the case in Europe. It's also been the case in um, pretty much around the world. This is what I would call a normal human reaction. K2's in the first house in this chart. So it does indicate a lot of disruption over the next year, a lot of resettling, a lot of trying to reorganize things. It won't all be successful because K2 is kind of a disorganizing principle. Also, this can be a little bit of a disease or war-prone year. I'm not seeing any worldwide conflagration happening. I'm not seeing any massive world war happening, but definitely we're going to see more internal conflicts and external conflicts. And the place which is actually I have my eye on right now is Vietnam and China because Vietnam's starting to push back against China. So I find that interesting. And the Far East, I actually said months ago, I think the Far East is going to be affected far more than Europe by the October eclipse. And I think the October eclipse was a more significant eclipse than uh, the one last April. So we'll see how that plays out. I could be wrong, but I think given where the planetary lines fell and um, given the planets that are involved, this will be a really interesting eclipse in terms of trade and in terms of national sovereignty. So India, China, Vietnam, I have my eye on those parts of the world very strongly. Um, if we look at the moon right now is in Shravana, is it in Shravana? No, it's in I have to Uttara Shada Nakshatra, and Uttara Shada is about to go into Shravana Nakshatra. So this will actually be the next couple of days are good days to start activities, start new things. Uh, we just left a new moon, so essentially a lot of the feeling of winding down has sort of left us, and I think we'll see a lot more activity over the next couple of weeks. Um, we do have a Moon Saturn Venus conjunction towards the middle of this coming week, so we'll look at the week in a second. Uh, but I think I think one of the things that I'm looking at is if I'm quartering this into a year, which is something you can do, first quarter of the year, you're around reorganizing lives, trying to figure out what we can afford and what we can't afford, and also restructuring government because the sun's in the fourth house. The second half or second third of the year, actually the second half, the second quarter of the year will be about government restructuring. The third quarter of the year will be about reaction to um, immigration and also about trade issues. And the last quarter of the year will be around new negotiations and maybe some conflicts, uh, especially connected with financial matters. Maybe we'll see a real estate calming down just a little bit. Hopefully it won't collapse. Let me just look at one thing right here. Certain chart you look at for real estate. Yeah, so we should see a little bit of a slowdown in real estate pricing growth towards the end of the year. Um, and as I've said, I think short term, I would say over the next year or so, because of pending cutbacks in government spending, because um, of threats to trade, we will see what I would call a slight recessionary cycle in the first year in 2025. I don't think it'll last very long. It won't be anything anywhere near as long as the 1980 as the intent or as intense as the 1980 recession. Um, and it won't be as long as the 2007, 2008 recession or the 2000. once 2006 slow economic growth cycle. But so, but in terms of, but it will be rather sharply felt, I think, especially around summertime. And that's mainly because of K2 moving into Leo, which should affect financial statuses because it's going over Uttara Falguni Nakshatra, and also because of Rahu going into Satabhishak. So you should see a lot of technological innovation this year, especially after June of this year. Okay, so that's general indications. Let's go to the week and go to now chart. It's not now. Hold on a second, my friends. That one. Sort of funny to see 2025. All right. So as we're talking right now, Mars is in the first house. Um, that does tend to set up a feeling that decisions are being made emotionally right now. Um, there have been efforts by the current administration to make sure that Trump can't undo um, certain things, certain funding packages. Just because I worked for um, government for a while, I know there are certain things that an incoming president can do to stop funding from moving forward, including things called a rescission. A rescission means that you essentially, even if money's been allocated, you can recall that allocation and just cut off the funding. So uh, the fact that money's been allocated actually is relatively meaningless. The president can just say, no, by the authority, and Reagan did this in 1980, by my authority, I'm not authorizing that expenditure. I'm recalling the money, and that's actually a fairly easy way to do it. Other things they're trying to do to institutionalize certain things can be undone by votes of Congress. So they are trying to make the transition as um, either safe or as difficult as possible, depending on your perspective. Um, and the Mars and Saturn aspect in this chart actually tend to make it a little bit more difficult to undo because of technical considerations, but um, given time, patience, and the right legislation, a lot of the things that have been institutionalized can be undone, um, or or they or they've institutionalized can be undone. Um, but again, there will be a lot of um, gnashing of teeth about it. And some political figures will not want to undo them as well. Even conservative political figures will not want to undo them as well. Um, Mars is aspecting Saturn and Venus, so there's some shortness of temper in relationship life, some sadness in relationship life has been happening over the past couple of days. Venus is entering Aquarius. It will give interest in unorthodox relationships or new approaches, new friendships will probably come up. Um, Rahu's in the ninth house, so again, this does indicate a change in government, but um, it won't be easy. Jupiter's is in the 11th house. Good in the short term, good for financial gains for this chart. And if we look at Moon right now, Moon is in Scorpio, so we're all a little bit down right now. That combination, Saturn's aspecting Scorpio as well. And so communications are a little bit stifled and stymied and delayed. That'll shift tomorrow when the new moon comes into play, and it'll be like people got a second lease on life. Uh, their energy levels will start to come back a bit tomorrow. Um, this has been kind of an interesting holiday season in that it's been slow to change. Yesterday was kind of I felt like a slow day to me. Today feels like a slow day to me. And essentially, it's that Moon Mercury conjunction. So you have all these great ideas, but everything seems like so much work to get them done. And now let's see what what the week seems like to be overall. Um, one, two, three, four. Mars is retrograde. You have to be careful about accidents. I've had people have a lot of freak accidents over the past few days. Um, I've gotten readings from two people about car accidents, why they're in a repeating cycle of car accidents. And it's not just a Mars retrograde, but just be really careful driving out there. Um, the other thing is from this chart, Jupiter's in the 11th house. It kind of blesses the chart, but it's also retrograde. So you have to be a little bit careful about over-optimism when Jupiter is retrograde. That's something I've noticed again and again repeatedly in my life. And there's this feeling that you can, essentially something's, so it's a fight between what you know you can do and what you think you can do. So let me see if I can clarify that. Um, Everybody has limitations, right? Even the richest people in the world or the strongest people in the world have limitations. Jupiter retrograde makes you feel like anything is possible and you can do anything. Now we know that's not true. Okay. We know that over time, sequentially, many things are possible. So you can set these long-term goals and do that. But Jupiter retrograde expects it to happen, like that. You know, it's as soon as I want it to happen, it'll happen. And actually, it does act that way a little bit because you have this sort of like all these opportunities open up. As a matter of fact, seemingly too many to take advantage of successfully. Okay, so this will increase communication skill, communication. It can increase Jupiter retrograde. I've seen can increase greed just a little bit, and also it can get. But again, like I said, I think the major thing to keep in mind is that it's okay to plan for things when Jupiter's retrograde, but the expectation that everything will turn out exactly as you planned it is probably going to be false. So you'll maybe get two out of the three things you really, really wanted to manifest, or they'll get delayed, or there'll be reasonable expectations as to why, or reasonable, not expectations. There'll be good reasons why they can't manifest right away. That's okay. You can, or else you may decide when Jupiter goes direct, you really don't want those things after all. So it's usually a good time not to make decisions. It's like when you're going in for an operation, they say not to sign any important papers or make any big decisions for 24 hours. Um, when when you come out of anesthesia, I say the same is true with a Jupiter retrograde. So you can make plans, but don't make commitments during Jupiter retrograde. It's really uh, you tend to overpromise. Okay, and as soon as Jupiter goes direct, you're kind of hit with that reality in your face, and say, "Yeah, I can do this," but geez, those other 50 things I was planning to do, and maybe I'm going to have to prioritize what I really want to do. So that's something to keep in mind. Um, because Jupiter, now the strongest planet in this chart is Saturn, so that's going to delay things anyway. Um, and second strongest planet, according to the Shadbala scheme, which is a way of assessing planetary strengths, is the moon. Okay. And third strongest is Mars, which is Mars is weak, debilitated, but it can still be strong. Okay. So those are the three primary influences in the chart. And Jupiter. Jupiter is tied with Mars. Okay. So those are the major planets you want to put your attention on. Uh, Venus, which has to do with romantic opportunities. Mercury with communications is the weakest planet. And Sun, which is connected with confidence, is the second weakest planet. So basically, um, if you're planning to work hard, good week. If you're planning to um, think about things you want to do and plan things out, good week. If you're trying to get things done quickly, don't try to do it. If you're trying to overcommit or make a lot of promises you know you can't keep, then don't do that. Try to measure yourself. Try to give yourself a little bit of breathing room. Okay. If we're looking at individual astrological signs, let's look at Aries. Aries has Jupiter in the second house. A little bit over enthusiastic about financial growth, but it's not a bad sign, not a bad placement. Mars is in the third house. You did hear about some bombing. Um, no, I've lost, not of Iran, but of another country. Um, Rats. Um, and so the Middle East does remain volatile right now. But again, I'm not seeing a major war outbreak. Maybe I'm wrong, but I, it's not really for 2 years, at least. And uh, so I'm not seeing any major conflict for about another couple of years. Um, let's see, the other thing that we have to do here. So Aries will feel a little bit tied to their home, a little bit prone to sickness, feeling a little bit depressed about home life and communications. But again, basically lucky if they take control. And if they control spending, if they control their output, they'll be okay. But again, that Rahu in the 12th house does encourage spending. It doesn't discourage it. For Taurus, this would be May 15th to June 15th. Jupiter's in the first house. That's very good. It's aspecting the moon, so this sign may be incentivized to write or put down outrageous New Year's resolutions over the next few days. Mars is in the third house. Again, the willpower is a little bit lacking right now. Mars weak in this sign. So there's effort, but it's really not strong effort. There is a kind of a cancellation of debilitation because Mars and Moon exchange signs, but Mars and Moon are both debilitated. They really don't help each other with this combination. And so essentially there's this, you're going to have to force yourself to follow through on your goals and your exercise plans. K2's in the fifth house. Children will be a little bit temperamental, difficult to manage. And also relationship partner will seem a little bit depressed or a little bit down. Sun is in the eighth house. That gives some problems with family members' health. Saturn and Venus are in the 10th house. Very good for work life. Rahu is in the 11th. Good for financial gain, but again, short-lived. So let's look over here. I don't use Uranus. To me, it's a redundant planet. And I've said this many times before. It's not that I have anything against it. It's just that I get similar results by looking at Rahu and Ketu. But Uranus is in the show. We'll just talk about Uranus for a second because I brought it up. Uranus is in the 12th house, so it can give unexpected expenditures. to Taurus. Okay, so I'll give it some um, some service there, but we can also see the same thing happening because of Mars being debilitated in the third house of desires or ambitions. Gemini, June 15th to July 15th. Gemini has Mars in the second house, so this sign will be a little bit worried about family members. Family members will have problems or depressions. Um, and children in particular will seem a little bit sad, but more controlled over the next few weeks. Moon is in the sixth house, so there's worry about health, there's worry about communications with family members, and also the sign feels a little bit concerned. They'll last for about 10 days, and it'll get some energy back. Sun is in the seventh house. That puts a lot of focus on any kind of business or long-term relationship for this particular sign. Saturn and Venus are in the ninth house, so this can give a return to a previous love affair or romantic involvement for this sign. Um, Rahu's in the 10th house, so some career fame or recognition is promised this sign this year, really until the summertime, but we'll see gains more towards the summertime. Jupiter's in the 12th house. Again, children are confined or have some problems, not really good communications with children, but also relationship life. It seems a little bit locked off or blocked away. And that will be the case for the next 6 months or so. Relationship life will seem a bit disappointing or will seem like you're a bit isolated. For Cancer, let's move to Cancer, which is July 15th to August 15th in the Vedic um, uh, sidereal zodiac. Mars is in the first house, as I've said many weeks before. This is kind of an odd combination in that Mars is a good planet for this rising sign. It rules the 10th house and the fifth house, so it's good for career and luck, but it's a little bit weak in this particular sign. So career life and luck will be strong, but this planet won't feel confident and it'll be very worried about those things. Uh, Second house lord is the sun, and it's placed in the sixth house. So work will produce, there'll be production of money with some effort. Uh, Moon is in the fifth house. That's a good placement for the moon. Again, the moon's a bit debilitated, but sometimes this sign tends to do better if it has something to worry about. K2's in the third house of ambition, and that's actually pretty good for the sign. And so you'll see the sign actually starting to develop more ambition and more goals over the next few weeks. Let's see now. Moon and Mercury in the fifth house, some worry about children, again for Cancer as well as for Gemini. And Sun is in the sixth house. You've already spoken about that. Saturn and Venus are in the eighth house. Again, this will give transformation over the next couple of months of relationship life. It may even give new relationship opportunities within about a couple of months for this particular sign. And Rahu is in the ninth house. This is generally good for luck. Rahu's not an entirely negative entity, although it may give unrealistic goals, but it's still well placed in the ninth house. And its Lord Jupiter is placed in the 11th house for this sign, so it should give some good financial growth for Cancer. For career life, there'll be a lot of focus on career life for this sign. For Leo, this will be August 15th to September 14th, roughly. Leo has the sun in the fifth house, so there's a lot of focus on luck, children, past life, past efforts paying off rather well. Home life is a little bit disturbed though, and that's mainly because of the Moon Mercury conjunction. There'll be a lot of miscommunication in home and family matters. That's true also because of K2 being in the second house. For Venus as Lord of the third house, placed in the seventh house, it'll give more comfort in long-term relationships to the sign, or the person will be wanting more predictability in long-term relationships and also in career life. Uh, Eighth house has Rahu in it. So there is some danger of conspiracies happening against an individual. This is Donald Trump's rising sign in the Vedic chart, and so we saw a couple of assassination attempts uh, this this past summer. I'm not saying it was part of a mass conspiracy to kill him, but essentially, if people are plotting to take your life, that does indicate people are planning things, are planning bad intent for you. So I think that that'll hold true really until June of this coming year. Um, Somebody like Trump's Leo won't necessarily have their life endangered, but there will be people gunning for them over the next 6 months or so. Um, let's see now, ninth house Lord is so again, watch your back. Leos should watch their back. Sun in Leo, Moon in Leo, or um, rising sign in Leo. Jupiter is in the 10th house in this chart, very good for career life. Luck from supervisors, not so good, but very good for gains for career for this sign. So overall, not a bad, except for that Rahu in the 8th house. Not a bad week for Leo. For Virgo, Virgo has K2 in the first house. This sign will be very sharp, very intuitive. K2's passing into, I have to push. Uttara Falguni. So it's moving out of Hasta, it's moving out of the astrology sign and moving into the wealth producing sign. So this could indicate people attempting to steal your wealth or money from you, or trying to pick on you for financial reasons. So be careful about scams and things like that. Any Virgo, this is September 15th to October 15th. Moon is in the third house, so strong desires, but again, not a lot of focus, not a lot of ability to bring them forward. But some small financial gains are indicated from this combination. Let's see now. Sun is in the fourth house. A lot of focus on home life and family life. Saturn and Venus are in the sixth. This isn't a bad combination, actually, for this particular rising sign. It gives them more strength, more energy, more productiveness. Rahu's in the seventh house. Again, relationship partners, business partnerships, long-term relationships, life will be a bit confusing. So it's a good idea for Virgos um, to really wait before they make a decision. Wait for about 6 months. Jupiter's in the ninth house. Actually, some good luck for this sign, believe it or not. Although, like I said, a little bit of over-optimism is connected with Jupiter retrograde. For Libra, and Mars, excuse me, Mars is in the 11th house. Good for financial gains, as I said before, but you really can't trust your friends. For Libra, Libra is um, Lord is in the fifth house. That actually brings past relationships to the fore. It can bring some romantic involvements with older or differently aged partners. I'm not necessarily saying that if you're already in a good relationship, you should dump it for somebody new. That's not the idea. There's a little bit of financial strain for this sign this week because of Mars in the 11th house and Moon in this particular sign for the next day or so. And Sun's in the third house, so this sign will be very ambitious over the next few weeks. It will actually be ambitious for financial growth, ambitious for money. It'll make things happen for itself. So its confidence won't be lacking. So that's good. Saturn and Venus in the fifth house. Actually, it's a good combination. It's considered to be a Raj Yoga combination for this particular sign. and that's a good thing. Saturn's aspecting Mercury too, so that's another Raj Yoga for this sign. So actually, financially, although there'll be worry or anxiety about money, this sign will get a lot of good deals. It'll save a lot of money. It'll get some financial incentives, but they'll come slowly. Rahu's in the sixth house. You have to watch out for illnesses or unexpected illnesses with this particular combination. They're not chronic, they're acute. There is some indication that this sign may have some problems with either the liver or kidneys, just because of Jupiter being in the eighth house, and Jupiter rules the liver pretty much as an organ. And let's see now, seventh lord is Mars. The Lord of Mars is in the 10th house, so a lot of career decisions will be wrapped up with how your relationship partner feels, or there'll be slow growth life. Scorpio. Scorpio has Moon and Mercury in the first house. Okay to watch out for unexpected debts or surprise debts. My apologies for Libra. Scorpio has Moon and Mercury in the first house. Again, this sign can't trust its friends, similar to Virgo. But Moon and Mercury in this sign will actually give some financial growth to this sign. It'll give some enhanced luck. And Sun's in the second house. It'll give some financial gain, some career growth. Saturn and Venus are in the fourth house. Some problems with family members. Um, Saturn and Venus aren't as friendly to the sign as they are to Libra. Um, and Rahu's in the fifth house. So again, some problems with children, in particular, children behaving badly. And Jupiter's in the seventh house. Relationship life should be good, but again, watch out for business partnerships being overly optimistic. Mars is in the ninth. A debilitated Mars in the ninth house isn't necessarily horrible for Scorpio rising, but it does compromise the sign's luck with supervisors or the people who oversee it. And that'll be the case until next June. So anybody with Scorpio has to look out for some oversight from the government or oversight from superiors. For Sagittarius, Sun is in the first house. That's the ninth house Lord. That's a good placement. It makes this sign more lucky and more confident this month. Moon and Mercury are in the 10th house, are in the 12th house, excuse me. Wow, sorry about that. And the 12th house Lord is Mars, which is placed in the 8th house. So we have what's called a Vipreet Raj Yoga. So these kind of cancel each other out, but there will be more monitoring or auditing of expenses for this particular sign. Ketu's in the 10th house. It will receive more criticism than normal. His confidence will be strong. That's a good thing. Saturn and Venus are in the third house. So there will be an attempt to control expenses or to control desires for this sign. And Rahu's in the fourth. So again, this does indicate domestic life can be in a bit of an upheaval. Jupiter's in the sixth house. Again, some illnesses or short-term attacks, maybe even ethical investigations you have to watch out for this particular sign. So it's not necessarily a horrible week, but again, a lot of challenges for Sagittarius Sun. For Capricorn, so this will be, so Scorpio is November 15th to December 15th. Sag is December 15th through January 15th. And Capricorn is January 15th through roughly February 14th. And Capricorn has two good planets located in the second house of wealth. So this sign should show increasing financial growth. This is one of the things that's making the markets relatively resilient, although they did show slide back last week. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Jupiter's in the fifth house. Again, um, maybe unrealistic expectations at this particular point in time, but a lot of ambition. Mars is in the seventh house. Some fights or arguments with relationship or business partners are quite possible, or relationship or business partners will not be as enthusiastic as you are. Ketu's in the ninth house. Expect unexpected disruptions in growth. So this is not a bad sign. Sun's in the 12th house, maybe some more government, um, some more money being taken out by the government for this sign. For Aquarius, Saturn and Venus are in the uh, first house. That's a great Raj Yoga for this particular sign. Venus doesn't really get strong until it hits the middle of the sign, to be honest. But I think a lot of people with Aquarius will see increased financial growth and increased happiness, increased personal happiness. Rahu's in the second house. Again, increased desire for financial growth. You'll be able to achieve that, but again, don't overspend. I said that's really the major theme I have for a lot of signs this month. Don't overspend. Um, Mars is in the sixth house, um, and I think with this particular pattern, it does tend to tamp down this sign's desire somewhat, and also make it focus a lot on work life. Um, Ketu's in the eighth house. There can be some unexpected criticism or harshness from relationship or business partners, maybe even some small deception or theft uh, or dishonesty, maybe is more appropriate to say. And Moon and Mercury are in the 10th house. So that's actually not a bad combination for this sign. It gives hard work, but good financial benefits from Mercury as the fifth lord and Ketu, and excuse me, Virgo as the eighth lord, giving some unexpected gains at work. And finally, Sun's in the 11th house, new friendships, new ambitions, new drive. Rahu is in the first house for Pisces. Again, it exposes the sign to a bit of scandal. We've seen that in earlier discussions I've had about this sign, and also in past events where we've seen problems with teachers or entertainers, scandalous activity from both when Rahu's been passing through Pisces. So the second house lord is Mars. It's a bit weak, but it's in the fifth house. So if you work hard, you can achieve a little bit of financial stability. Jupiter's in the third house. Um, a lot of desire to be polite and be accommodating from this sign. Kate, who's in the seventh, relationship partners will seem to be a little bit depressed or distant. Moon and Mercury are in the ninth house. That's actually a good combination for this chart. It gives the fourth house and the seventh house in conjunction with the eighth house, with the fifth house lord, which is actually a good combination. It's not a classical Raj Yoga, but it's a good combination for financial luck from relationship partner. Sun is in the 10th house, so it'll give a lot of career focus to the sign. But again, that Saturn, Venus in the 12th house, over expenditure patterns are are incredibly common in these charts. So again, don't spend more than you can reasonably expect to finance. Okay. All right, let's look at the astro map. And we'll make it bigger and close it. And this should make it do what I want it to do. And it does. Hooray. Okay, so I heard about some hurricanes that hit Hawaii. Okay, so that was um I I was saying there were some problems in Hawaii last week, but I didn't realize there were storms out there, and so that's how that manifested in the chart. And this is, yeah, after damage to property and to land, obviously. Um, there are probably big storms up in Alaska, but that's probably not uncommon. And we see the Moon, Mercury, and Jupiter line going down, but it's really not touching anything on the West Coast. There's a Venus line, so this should give it a lot of moisture, but it's in the middle of the ocean. I'm not sure how it's going to affect anybody. There is a Saturn line going through um, Idaho, Nevada, Western Oregon, Eastern Oregon, and Eastern Washington State, and that should cause some kind of financial hardship to those parts of the country. Um, there's a Mercury line. So I have heard stories about increasing homelessness, and there's currently a budget crisis in California. So that's reflective. Saturn line is hitting California and Nevada and Idaho more strongly than the other states. So that's but the California one is really quite pronounced. You know, it's very visible. There's a sun line going through this Idaho line over here, so this could indicate government scandal in Nevada and in Oregon and maybe in Idaho, um, or government um, excessive government control, especially in Arizona, down into Mexico. And there's a Rahu line, definitely some scandals in North and South Dakota, um, Nebraska, Kansas, down through Texas, and down into Mexico. As a matter of fact, really close to Mexico City. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of big political scandal in Mexico City or close to it. There's a Mars line running through, um, basically through Minnesota, all the way through Wisconsin, all the way down into Illinois and down into South Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee. So Mars lines and also hitting Cuba. There's currently a governmental crisis in Cuba. I know that. Um, Dominican Republic and Haiti aren't in such great shape. Um, so this is not really surprising. There's the Rahu line, by the way, I should say Canada has been suffering some pretty tough financial times as well. So it's definitely, those lines are definitely affecting Canada. Um, and there's a Venus line running through Nova Scotia and down into Brazil. We'll talk about the Mars line going through Venezuela, down into Brazil, down to Paraguay and Uruguay. And um, I think uh, the sun line running through Argentina is not such a concern to me because that kind of indicates the government taking a responsibility, and there's a Jupiter line supporting it. So that's not really all that bad, a line. But so the Sun Jupiter line, which indicates a return to orthodoxy or more conservative, traditional type of society. Not sure whether that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's what it indicates. But the Mars line running through here is kind of troubling because it can indicate uh, very bad storm patterns, uh, bad financial patterns, especially in real estate, and also maybe even some fires. and flooding in this part of the world. And this line is running straight through uh, the lar straight through the main part of South America and one of the main parts of the United States. And there is a water line in Brazil, so that's usually indicative of both of problems in the entertainment industry and also um, with water. There's a Jupiter line running right down the middle of the Atlantic, a Jupiter Moon Mercury line right down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and there's a Saturn line intersecting those. So seafaring vessels and transatlantic flights should probably be careful. These lines are coming really close to the Azores, so there can be some flooding or some bad storm activity out there. The next big line we see is a Rahu line threatening Ireland and a Sun line threatening England, Spain, Morocco, and Chad and all the West African republics. Um, and there's a Mars line, and there's all these countries in here like Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Belgium. They're kind of scrunched between Rahu and Mars. So this indicates some economic trouble. Libya, Algeria are experiencing some financial trouble, so is Egypt, and going all the way down to Somalia and down to South Africa. The other lines, and again, this is based in part on the status of the planets in the chart, and also based upon the actual characteristics of the planets. Some flooding in, oh, that's right, that was where the um, some kind of rocket attack from over here in Afghanistan. It was apparently an accident, but in Afghanistan. Um, so, or Pakistan to Bangladesh, which was really kind of a stretch, but that's what I recall from the news story. I probably got it wrong. There is a Venus line running down here through Ukraine and through Saudi Arabia. So, and also through Madagascar. This isn't such a bad line, but again, some potential for flooding or weather problems. Um, there's a Jupiter line running down through Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan. I'm sorry, Afghanistan, Pakistan. And there's a Mercury Jupiter line running up through Western India and is crossing over a moon line over here in central India, close to Sri Lanka, and also hitting into China and Tibet and Russia. So the Ukraine conflict is definitely still ongoing, uh, but maybe some resolution, maybe some slowdown, I hope, with this Venus line here. Uh, the other line I want to draw your attention to is definitely some government scandal in India. Um, Definitely some uh, charges of political corruption. Um, and, you know, a sun line running up through China, sort of touching on Vietnam. But like I said, Vietnam is interesting. Um, and this was one of the big arguments against um, by Arnold Toynbee, an historian, against the Vietnam War. That is, Vietnam and China were natural enemies, so they would actually stop expansionism if uh, they were left alone. Um, the problem was the region was so destabilized that Cambodia became a communist state and resulted in 3 million people being uh, uh, exterminated. Um, and again, the United States played a very big role in that. But I'm not here to revisit history, just because this essentially the bombing of Cambodia allowed um, that that transition to occur, encouraged it to occur. Um, so the sun is going up through China, so it indicates increased government control and increased government involvement in Cambodia, China, and also some minor military activity in South Korea, Japan, Philippines, and Borneo and Indonesia. Finally, we have this line right here, which is really tough to trace. This looks like a Jupiter line. Okay, over here. That's a Venus. No, let me just. Some of these lines are tough to see. Closest I can trace is an ascending Jupiter line over here. So that's passing over Australia, but it's being intersected by a Saturn line and also my friends in Tasmania. And I actually do have friends in Tasmania. Uh, Should be experiencing some uh, difficulty with government support and also some economic pressure in Eastern Australia. And finally, let's go over to New Zealand. For New Zealand has Rahu in the first, or not in the first, it has Rahu going over it. So there can be some panic and some government scandal in New Zealand yet again. So that's the week in a nutshell. And also, I gave you a brief overview of the year. I'll be back next year, and I do expect to be doing more broadcasts. It's just there have been more time constraints than I've cared to mention, just because of conflicting commitments. And again, like I said, I had to do um, some minor work. So, but again, we'll get there, and I I can at least put these out weekly at the very least, and look forward to your review and comments. And I love you all, and I wish you a happy, prosperous, and healthy new year. And God bless you, Eric. God bless you one and all. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you so much. And thank you again for all your support. Okay. And let's make this sucker grow. I'll do my best to modify the programming so we can do that. Okay. Thanks a lot, folks. You take care, okay? And be well and have a great new year. I know you can. Bye, all. See you next year.